This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening. Happy Monday to everybody. Wanted to get a quick-ish podcast out to you guys as SMU moves to 6-1, bowl eligible with the win over Stanford. Also have so much to kind of knock out as far as housekeeping that I don't want to take up a ton of time doing that when Hayden Howerton and I record our podcast tonight to break down SMU's win over Stanford and go coast to coast and do all of those things. So let's jump right in here. Do want to say thank you guys to supporting the site. But if you haven't subscribed to ontheponyexpress.com, go there and do it now. Trust me, we're having a blast. The message board's popping. Things are really rolling right now. If you want to be able to chat it up with other SMU fans, do that. We had a bunch of people at SMU-Stanford that we met. We got them signed up. We also saw them at the Epic event Friday night, got them signed up. The site continues to grow. So don't forget about the website piece of this, guys. You can get daily email from me with all the latest SMU news, as well as all the recruiting inside stuff, the tidbits on the team. Obviously, people are wondering about RJ Maryland's injury. We've got everything going on right there right now. And with that being said, we've got to do our usual run through of sponsors, and we want to appreciate StatusJet for supporting the On the Pony Express podcast. StatusJet.com. Go reach out to David Henry and his team today. Get your flight booked for that matchup at Duke, 7 p.m. Central in Durham this weekend on ACC Network. Saw David Henry was out at SMU Stanford this weekend. He was bumping into some of our subscribers at ontheponyexpress.com, having a blast, enjoying himself. And you can do that when you book with a company like StatusJet. They can get you there from point A to point B, handle all the logistics around your trip. So reach out to them, mention code PonyUpACC or on theponyexpress.com for a discount on a round trip flight. It'll help you out. And we know some of our subscribers use StatusJet to get out to Palo Alto this weekend. So appreciate StatusJet and want to give another shout out to our friends at Mosquito Shield. Mosquito.com is where you can find more information on how to make sure your backyard is all set and ready to go for the rest of mosquito season. It is starting to cool down, but you need to get their mosquito control done. They do a great job. They don't even need to come out and assess your yard. They can just do it from over the phone and mention code PonyUp to get their best pricing of the season. And appreciate their sponsorship of the After Stang Show. Dean Rowski was out there with me in Palo Alto, did an awesome job on the After Stang Show. And I'll be out there in Durham this weekend. So we'll do that as well and get back on track kind of on the After Stang Show piece and taking questions. But it was just kind of a really unique stadium setup. It was probably the longest walk ever to a post-game podcast spot and the field and all of those things. So we couldn't really do it live when their press box closed. So Dean recorded it, and then I'm coming in here with an extra podcast for you guys as well to kick off the week. All right, a lot of housekeeping out of the way. Do want to talk quickly about the Friday night Epic event at Epic Estate Wines in Paso Robles. Bill Armstrong, myself, we did a live podcast there for the audience in attendance. We had about 80 people come through, people who have been watching on the YouTube, listening to Walking Strong, our podcast, being on the website. So many great subscribers, friends, people that have supported us for a long, long time were there. And even some people that, I hadn't seen before. Got to meet a lot of new people. And it was just really special. And Paso Robles and Epic is a really special place for me, Michelle, now Jack. And we really enjoy our time getting out there and spending time with the great Epic team. They did an unbelievable job Friday, an unbelievable job on Saturday. We had 200 people, I think was the last count, that were signed up for the Epic tailgate at SMU Stanford. And more to come on what's next with all of that, with SMU's West Coast trips. Bill and I are recording our podcast on Monday afternoon for this week for the Duke game. But just so many people showed up for that complimentary tailgate as well. I want to shout out Ahmad Walker's parents, met so many people that hadn't gotten a chance to meet before, which was awesome. Saw a lot of the On the Pony Express hats, and just a perfect kickoff to what was a dominant win for SMU over Stanford. And I'm really excited about what we're doing with Epic and the future with that. I think the word is going to be out that, Paso is a great place to kick off the weekend for Stanford, for Cal, and do it with Epic Wines and on the Pony Express. We'll always have a presence out there whenever SMU plays out on the West Coast against Cal or Stanford. And those of you who went Friday night, they said it on the message board, just how great of an event it was. And not to toot our own horns, but, being able to record a podcast with that live audience was really cool. Having Michelle and Jack there and some great subscribers and things like that was huge. So really, really lucky to, as Voice has been talking all weekend, really, really lucky to have so many people supporting us and just being a part of the On the Pony Express family. So again, spread the word about how great the event was if you were there, whether it be Friday, Saturday, or both. We had the bus ride rolling on Saturday morning to Palo Alto as well. So it worked out really well for the most part. A couple things we'll clean up, but we'll be back and ready for more trips out there and to have more of our subscribers and different folks out there for that. I think it set the standard pretty high for how to do that SMU Stanford or SMU Cal weekend. So more to come on that, but let's jump into the game a little bit here. And again, Hayden Howerton and I will break it down tonight, but I did want to get some of my thoughts out there and kind of just not dominate some of the conversation with Hayden, because he's got some great notes lined up as well for tonight when we record our podcast. But look, SMU jumped out to a 21-0 lead over Stanford. And you look at a game like this where SMU was very clearly the better team, clearly a more talented team, a better coach team, better prepared to start. And it is natural to say, well, they could have played better. And it's true. And the coaches are going to be saying that. I mean, it wasn't a perfect game. There were lulls. There were missed opportunities for SMU. There's a lot of things to clean up and some injuries to keep an eye on. RJ Maryland went down with a knee injury. Looked like a knee injury. Looks serious, but we'll be awaiting word from Rhett Lashley. We talked about it at ontheponyexpress.com if you want more there. But Jonathan Jefferson went down at some point. Jake Bailey got nicked up at some point. He returned. PJ Williams went down at some point. He returned. So some things to keep an eye on there. Bashard Smith did play after sitting out the first half on offensive snaps and averaged, 8.4 yards per carry. Yeah, that'll play. Now, he did have 7 carries for 27 yards outside of his one long run for 40. So not insanely good there by any means, something they'll definitely want to improve upon with him. But by that point, the game was well in hand, even coming out of halftime. I mean, SMU just kind of coasted there to the win, 31-7 at the half, and they were able to get Bashard back in there and get him some work, so he didn't have 2 whole weeks off until the Duke game. So when you play an opponent that is outclassed, and I think particularly at this level, like if that's Temple, if that's Charlotte, if that's North Texas, I think you're looking at 55, you're looking at 60 points. And we've seen that. We saw that last year. But sometimes other teams do play hard and they do keep going. And I felt like Stanford did that throughout the night. And SMU wasn't able to turn it into a complete embarrassment for Stanford. I think Stanford has a lot of issues. They've been now outscored 160 to 38 over their last 4 games. So really, really rough times there for Stanford. But for SMU and on the board, I think there's this is every message board. There's a negative bias. And a negative bias is you talk more about the negatives. And I mean, whether you and it could, if we were talking in person, it would be there would be more positive context. There would be more, wow, Kevin Jennings, 17 of 27, 322 yards, threw the one bad interception, 3 touchdowns, completed 63% of his passes, a little bit of dip from where he's been at the completion sense. But wow, I mean, that third down conversion where he flipped his hips and hit LJ Johnson, some of the throws that he made, the touchdown to RJ Maryland, the deep ball to Keyshawn Smith, the opening play to Moochie Dixon, you would have more positive context. On the message board, you have a tendency to hammer the negative. And there is a fair amount of negative on what SMU has to clean up. But let me be very, very clear. It almost seemed like on the board that SMU lost the game from some people. And quite honestly, there is because of the 3-game win streak going into Stanford and because of how bad Stanford is, they are a bad football team. And because people know SMU could have and should have, or whatever you want to put it, beaten the tar out of Stanford even more, there's a clear sense of entitlement creeping in to the fan base right now, parts of the fan base. And have at it. But there is a lot that SMU needs to clean up from this week. But it is still very hard to go on the road and win football games. And further, it's very hard to do it coming off a bye. You're going against an opponent that's very bad right now. You're in basically an empty stadium. I mean, friend of the show, Eric McLean, even said it was the worst environment he's seen in a long, long time. He compared it to Pop Warner. It's true. And you couple that with SMU getting up 21-0 and 31-7 at the half, guys. We're talking about a 31-7 lead. And with young people, kind of a casualness can and usually creeps in. There's very few times where you're going to see a team just boat race another power conference team start to finish. I think we saw Indiana beat Nebraska 59-7. Awesome for them. Happens. We saw SMU boat race Florida State pretty much start to finish. They were in control, a little close at half. We saw SMU boat race TCU. We saw SMU take care of business against Louisville. But there is, for the most part, going to always be things to clean up in college football. It's going to happen. And SMU knows that. And this coaching staff knows that and handles this team very well. And I just think people need to be reminded that SMU is 6-1, bowl eligible, top 25. They beat the heck out of Stanford with a lot of mental errors on penalties, turnovers. Obviously, Roderick Daniels has to clean up catching the punts, things like that. But you've got to look at the overall picture. This game was never in doubt. Stanford was never getting anything going in the passing game. They finished with 173 total yards. They finished with 33 rushing yards. They averaged less than 1 yard per carry on the ground. 1 yard per carry, 0.9, guys. And meanwhile, SMU's offense threw for over 300 yards. They rushed for 179. They averaged 4.7 yards per carry. I mean, you're looking at a win that really the numbers don't add up, that people should be mopey. And that's what I'm picking up from a lot of the fan base. And I just want to say, from my standpoint of following this team, and we've followed a lot of bad teams together for SMU, but people need a little bit of a reality check on how good this team is, while knowing that they still have to clean things up. And for those that immediately took it to, well, if we play like that against Duke, we're going to lose. Probably not, guys. Probably not. Okay. Duke had 183 yards of total offense and won 23-16, I believe, against a bad Florida State team. They forced 4 turnovers. They were able to take advantage of that and win the game. If SMU plays like it did against Stanford, they're going to beat Duke. Sorry, that's just how it's going to be. SMU's got a better offensive line to run the football than Florida State does. They've got all of these different things going for them. If you turn it into a complete turnover fest and SMU moves the ball for 183 yards like Duke did against Florida State, they could lose. That's the difference, though. SMU put up 500 yards of offense, and they didn't play their best. Defensively, they gave up a couple plays here or there, but they held them to less than 1 yard a carry. They made them change quarterbacks, I'll remind you guys. And then on special teams, Colin Rogers hit a 51-yarder. They missed a 47 or 49-yard field goal. They blocked a punt, SMU did. Isaac Pearson had his best game of the season. Roderick Daniels, again, has to clean up the punt returns, but also took one 18 yards for a return. Pretty good field position changing move there. Brashard Smith had I think a 37-yard kickoff return. There's a lot of things that get lost in the fold of these games when you look at one play or one moment, and then you let that drive your own narrative to be what you want it to be. Like, one thing about SMU, and Kevin Lundquist mentioned this, and what was he thinking? They are a heavily penalized team. That's who they are right now. And they've got to clean that up. There's some things they've got to do. There were some late hits. There was blindside block on Isaiah Wakobia's interception return. There was a personal foul. There was I think there was a unsportsmanlike. You've got to get those things as under control as you can. And 10 penalties for 100 yards isn't good. I'm not sugarcoating it. But also, context, SMU was beating the absolute brakes off of Stanford. Stanford was frustrated. SMU was taking out some of its own maybe frustration with Stanford's frustration with a late hit here. Unsportsmanlike penalty there when you're up. I think it was maybe on the 40-10. By the way, the defense scored a safety too because of Isaac Pearson getting the ball down at the 1, I'll add. There's a lot of good that came out of this game. And added up to also just playing in a weird, sad environment. I mean, somebody mentioned on the board, and I totally agree with this, the club takeaway after Deuce Harmon's interception, I think. Maybe Isaiah Wakobia's, but Deuce Harmon's interception. Sad. Just kind of, sad. And they kind of got, it was such a sad environment. I really don't know how else to say it. But what SMU did was they absolutely took care of business. And coming off a bye, I mean, they started as well as you could ask for. I mean, they really did. Like, they weren't ready to play. But there's a lot that SMU can clean up. They allowed some sacks for really the first time since Kevin Jennings has taken over at quarterback. Louisville got a couple on him, I think. But for the most part, Stanford's been the team that got after Kevin Jennings the best. And honestly, I mean, they're probably more on Kevin, quite frankly, than the offensive line. And he was under pressure. Don't get me wrong. The offensive line did not play particularly well in pass protection. But there was the RPO that I don't know if it was an RPO. I don't know the play call, but Kevin could have given it to Brashard Smith. He maybe would have scored it if it was a true RPO or if they tagged it. I don't know. He was sacked immediately. He ran around and scrambled and took a sack. And then there was another sack at some point or whatever. But there's a team at SMU right now that is very much in control of how they're playing at a high level. They're not playing at a low level. They're not getting by with this or with that. They've beaten 4 straight teams. They've looked really, really good doing it. I would say in 3 of the 4, previously top 25 Louisville included. That was a hard place to play. SMU didn't have a problem with energy. This is the game that SMU didn't necessarily look that great doing it. But you look at what SMU was able to do to Stanford. They didn't give them any hope. Rhett Lashley said that during the game, if you're watching the mini movie, and they kept their foot on the gas. They finished. They scored 9 points in the fourth quarter. They finished it off well with a touchdown offensively. The defense got a safety. And I mean, it's a game that should be celebrated a little bit more than what it is. And you can do whatever you want. I'm just trying to give you guys a little bit of perspective of how kind of difficult it was to maybe be out there, but also that SMU was in complete and total control throughout this entire game. And hey, have a little bit more pep in your step. You just got bowl eligible at 6-1 in your first season of ACC play. Now, I'll end with this. Lots of questions now. RJ Maryland, we'll see where he's at. I would imagine Rhett Lashley announces something on Tuesday, so stay tuned there. And they were in such control that Jonathan Jefferson, who was in street clothes after the game, they probably held him out for the rest of that one. And we'll see where he's at. Brashard Smith is playing through something. I mean, he is, and he's still productive and still found a way to get going a little bit, but they've got to get him in the mix. It's something he's going to deal with throughout the season, and we'll see how it goes. But Stone Eby returned for Poison Ivy. He was ready to go. They also did get Tank Booker back, big nose tackle. He practiced. He was ready to rock and roll, just like we said he was going to be before the game. So this is a team that is pretty healthy for the most part going into this stretch. That includes a key road matchup at Duke. And then you've got Pitt coming to Dallas. We did learn on Monday that it is the 6-day window, so we won't find out anything on TV or maybe even College Game Day until Saturday night, early Sunday morning on SMU Pitt. So stay tuned for that. But as SMU gets into Duke prep this week, this is a game that's going to mean a lot to Rhett Lashley and his staff. Manny Diaz, a lot of them are familiar with him from when they were all at Miami. Then you have Johnny Brewer, the OC there at Duke. Malik Murphy's playing okay football, but the offense just overall did not have a good game against Florida State. I expect SMU's defense to have a really solid day Saturday night against Duke. And offensively, this is where you're going to get another test. Duke's run defense is really good, at least on paper. SMU has one of the better rushing offenses in the league. And so Kevin Jennings controlled the football, had a bad turnover. Rhett Lashley said it was ugly. It was. But that was kind of, I think, the microcosm of when SMU was off and kind of playing lax. That's kind of what you got. They refocused. They were able to get past that, of course, and move on. But when you're playing with a lot of confidence and you're playing against a team that's really bad, sometimes you do some maybe unfundamentally sound things because you either know you can get away with them or you're taking a little bit more of a risk because you're playing with a big lead like SMU was. And that one in particular just, bit SMU with Stanford capitalizing on a touchdown. On a great catch by Alec Ayamanor. I thought CJ Sanders could have played through him a little bit more and really kind of aggressively batted it down, but a great catch nonetheless. But SMU just they've got to clean up the little things. They've got to fix the pass protection. And Stanford, I think they completely sold out to stop the pass. I mean, they didn't do anything that really was special in terms of, they just didn't do anything special. They just said go. And so there is some things that SMU could clean up, but also there were guys running wide open because of that sellout approach that Stanford took. So something to keep an eye on there. Kevin Jennings took advantage of it a good bit. He had some throws he probably wants back, including that interception. But overall, I mean, you're looking at a really, really good showing from SMU. They had the lulls in the middle, so you got to just hope that they play a little bit more consistent. But again, you're talking about a team that was up 21-0 early, got up 31-7 at the half, and things can just kind of get into a lull when you're playing at that high of a level. And you're seeing the result on the scoreboard, it can happen. So sure, SMU has some things to clean up coming after a return to action off that bye week. And now that they're kind of back into the groove, I think they're going to be able to play a little bit more cleaner against Duke. They've gotten back into their routine now. They got back early Sunday morning, so they had the day off, rest up, and then they'll get to their walkthroughs today, and then get to the usual game prep Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then travel to Duke Friday and get it going. 7 p.m. with the ACC Network crew. ACC Huddle will be there as well. So they continue to follow SMU around a little bit this year. And Hayden Howerton and I will break down the Stanford game. I'll get his thoughts tonight on that, and we'll have a full run there. But did want to share some post game thoughts. Did want to kind of get back a little bit of the thoughts and kind of my just feeling on this game before Hayden gets shares a lot of his with you guys on the podcast. But we will end with a couple of quick recruiting notes on SMU football and SMU basketball as well. And the big one that people are asking about right now on the football side of things is 4-star wide receiver commit Jaylen Cooper. A lot of you guys got all up in arms when he did go to Notre Dame, and our Notre Dame site saw a little bit of positivity coming off the visit, which I've never heard of a bad visit. Steve Wiltfong, our national reporter, just called me in the middle of this podcast, and we had a little chat about where things stand with Jaylen Cooper, who did visit Notre Dame. And what he's hearing is similar to what I'm hearing, and that is that SMU is in good shape to keep Jaylen Cooper right now. We'll be keeping a close eye on it overall as the visit high continues to kind of be right there, and we'll see if they do get through this. But the early report from Steve Wiltfong, which backs up kind of what I heard, that Jaylen was in contact with SMU, very just normal discussion. It sounds like SMU's out of the woods in terms of Notre Dame flipping him. So that's a good update. Again, recruiting's fluid. Don't take it for everything, but a good sign there for SMU. And we'll be keeping an eye on Jaylen Cooper as he is one of the best wide receivers in the country. But right now, things look decent for SMU to keep him in the class.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast.
And before we get into the rest of the recruiting updates that I've got on basketball, and sorry for the little intro video there, a little glitch, but do got to remind you guys about our friends at ACM Turfing Greens. Alex Carpenter and Meredith Carpenter were out there at SMU-Stanford with us, just enjoying the ponies beating up on the Cardinal. And we got to spend a lot of time with them. And also they got around a lot of the subscribers sharing their turf and greens business. So they're right in it, invested on the Mustangs. And it's a perfect time for you guys to invest in a turfed backyard, putting green, or just entertaining area, and do it with code PONYUP. That gets you $500 off your project today. Make sure your backyard looks pristine for the rest of fall and into winter, so you guys can be sure to enjoy it, all the entertaining space, all the fresh landscaping that doesn't have to be really maintained. You can be weed free and all of that. So reach out to akmturfinggreens.com today, and they'll get you hooked up with the yard of your dreams. All right, finally, we go into the last piece here, and that is that SMU Basketball snuck 2 official visitors onto campus this weekend. And once again, 2 highly sought after, highly thought of prospects. And we begin with Nigel Walls, a 6'10", 200-pound forward from Houston, top 100 prospect in the country. He's fresh off an official visit to SMU. He did already get by Auburn earlier this fall, and he visited SMU unofficially back in August, kind of kicking off that fall for him. So SMU has a little bit of momentum. It's Auburn, SMU, TCU, and Rice really is what he said at the end of September when our Auburn site talked with him. I'll catch up with Nigel here for a full recap, but this is a top 100 prospect who is really thought of highly among the recruiting industry. He's a consensus 4-star prospect, and we'll see how this goes with SMU. SMU is recruiting another Houston area prospect, Sebastian Williams-Adams, as well. So we're continuing to monitor things with him. But he's one of the top prospects in the country, and we'll see how the Mustangs do with him as he gets closer and closer to locking down a decision. Then we have another prospect that made his way to campus, BJ Davis-Ray, out of St. Louis originally, but now in California. And SMU had him on campus over the summer as well for an unofficial visit right off the bat, really, in May. And this is a guy who has kind of transferred around a little bit now. He was at Duncanville last year, and now he's transferred to J. Sarah Catholic out there in California. So he's finishing up his recruitment as well and getting closer to a decision. He's a 4-star prospect on every service right now, except for on 3, but still one of the top prospects in the country, and is certainly getting recruited as such. And we'll be keeping a close eye to see on where things stand with him as they get going closer to decision time. This is an SMU recruiting class that does have 2 kids committed in Jaden Toombs and Jermaine O'Neal Jr., 2 4-star prospects that committed last month, I believe. Maybe this month. The time's been flying, but BJ Davis Ray is a guy who they really like. You know, they brought him in right off the bat when he was at Duncanville. He's a wing prospect that SMU's looking at, kind of shooting guard forward. But that's kind of what they're looking for. They're looking for those big wings to help them in ACC play with some of the unicorns that run around out there. So it doesn't surprise me that both of them popped in for visits, just, you know, kind of how they've been recruited by SMU, both being brought in for unofficial visits over the last couple months. But certainly caught off guard a little bit when it comes to the timing of it with this Stanford road trip sneaking up and it not being a home game weekend for SMU. But they get both those guys on campus in the class of 2025, and we'll see how things go with them down the stretch here. But with that, guys, I think that pretty much wraps things up. So just want to remind you guys to check out StatusJet. Go to statusjet.com. Use code PonyUpACC for a discount on your round trip flight. The Mustangs are 6-1, bowl eligible in their first season of ACC play, and they are continuing to keep it rolling. So check out ontheponyexpress.com. We'll be here for you guys as SMU heads to Duke. Get in Friday night. Meet us at Tobacco Road Sports Cafe Friday night to watch Louisville Boston College as well. We'll be there watching it and taking it all in as SMU gets ready for another critical ACC matchup on the road. So that'll be Duke Saturday, 7 p.m. Central on ACC Network. And also stay tuned to ontheponyexpress.com. Getting close to SMU basketball season, and we'll be continuing to roll out all of our preseason content for the team as they get going next week, believe it or not, next week or maybe the week after. But needless to say, it's coming up quick. We'll be there to cover it all for you guys at ontheponyexpress.com. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU-on3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.